Well, so let me just do an introduction of my guest this morning. I have a Deputy Minister of Local Government and Rural Development here. He's also Member of Parliament for Ekwapim South, Obi Amwa. Obi, good morning to you.
Morning.
And we'll be talking about many things. He'll be joined by George Lowe. George Lowe is also a former Member of Parliament for North Dime, but also we'll look at many other related issues. He's also a legal practitioner, so he helps all of us for that conversation. But we're talking about the creation of the new regions, and we know the controversy, especially emanating from the Volta region, and the former Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Obed Asamoah, has described as unconstitutional calls by traditional authorities, mainly in Southern Volta, for the referendum on the creation of the proposed OT region to be extended to the entire Volta region. According to him, the argument that the Constitution has enshrined that referendum on new regions should be organized in the entire affected areas is legal nonsense.
In the southern part of the Volta region, including the President of the National House of Chiefs and Agbogbo Mefia of the Asogli State, Togbi Apede the 14th, have been calling for the participation of the entire region in the referendum on the territorial split of the region. However, Dr. Asamoah, who participated in the framing of the 1992 Constitution, rebuts that argument.
Specifying the issues to be determined by the referendum and the places where the referendum should be held. It's the Commission of Inquiry that specifies that. It's not even the President. It is within the jurisdiction of the Commission of Inquiry. So when the Commission, the Broadway Commission has made this report, they have recommended that the referendum be held in only part of Volta region, on only that part that will be affected by the creation of a new region. It is within their remit to do that. It's within their power. Even the President cannot alter that. And you will see that in Clause 5.
He lamented the underdeveloped state of the OT enclave and expressed optimism a new region would harness development in the area.
Obviously, the cake, the national cake that will be cut for the whole of Volta region, they will now have to split it. And some of it will have to go to the north. The people in the south alone cannot benefit from all of it because the government will assign a certain part of it to the north. If you look at the south, you can count the number of prominent people who held government positions. Naturally, they influenced the decisions of government with regard to development.
Dr. Asamoah, who indicated he has no personal interest in the call for a new region, urged the opposition National Democratic Congress to fully support the cause so as not to lose their stronghold to the governing New Patriotic Party.
I am only fighting for posterity. I don't have a personal interest. Now, these political issues that I raise, you will see in the last paragraph of my statement that I'm warning the NDC people not to be seen to be against OT region. You know, it's because of the experience of Upper West. If the OT region is created, and it will be created because the people in the north, I mean from this side, they are going to vote massively for it. When it's created, and it appears it's the NDC that was resisting the creation of it, the political consequence will be that the NDPP will harness the support of the people.
Fred Kwame Asari's report for JoyNews.
Well, that's a former Attorney General, Dr. Obed Asamoah. But that's why I bring my discussant in this morning. And good morning again, once again, Obi.
Good morning.
Yesterday I saw you on the, is it the Appointments Committee?
Yes.
Yeah. And the minority leader was raising all the issues about the Deputy Minister designate for the Bonafu region, and according to the Constitution, there needed to have been a consultation. Of course, that was rebutted by the majority leader. But,
yes.
How did that all come about? What was the conclusion?
Well, at the end of the day, we carried out the vetting as required under the Constitution. And then, of course, we expect the committee to send its report to the whole House. But if you look at the situation, there are various aspects of it. What the Constitution says under 2562, Article 2562, is that the President may appoint a deputy minister or deputy ministers for a region. And if he decides to do that, one, it should be in consultation with the minister in charge of that region, and two, with the prior approval of Parliament. Now, the issue which came up was whether the president had consulted the minister in charge before he submitted a list, because the list contained the minister designated for the region and a deputy minister, which on the face of it, the question will arise, then where is the minister to have been consulted? But then we had additional information. A document was submitted to us, which showed that even though the announcement was made on the 9th, that the regional minister is now the new minister for lands, he was asked to stay on till 20th.
Of August?
Of August.
Okay.
So the assumption is that between 9th and 20th August, anything that he did in that region was legitimate. So if within that period, the president is presumed to have consulted him before bringing the name for the deputy, there's nothing wrong with it. And then the issue which came was, he is not the one who's going to work with the deputy, so why should he be the one who is consulted? I talked about the whole thing. I said that this whole provision is not necessary. That provision in the Constitution is outmoded and it has no relevance. As far as I'm concerned, it has no relevance.
Because it kind of restricts the president in moving...
The president has appointed his subordinate to be a minister. And you are saying that if he is appointing a deputy, he should consult the minister before he appoints a deputy. And what is the relevance of it? I don't see the relevance, because if the president consults the minister today and appoints a deputy, the following day, the president can remove the minister. And a new minister will come and work with the deputy.
But the Constitution has a certain reason or hindsight or rationale. The deputy may have worked under the minister to become a substantive.
No, the Constitution says when the president wants to appoint a deputy, he should consult the minister.
Maybe we look at the competence of the one coming in.
Is he the minister who is going to determine who
also has been appointed in the first place by that very appointed authority?
Yeah, and is he in a position to tell the president that no?
He's not. I mean, the scheme of things, no.
No.
Physically, it would be very difficult to tell.
So that poor provision, I still don't understand. If it's Council of State, it's different.
Well, that's why you're members of Parliament.
If it's Council of State, it's different, because it's a constitutional body giving certain functions and responsibilities, and without those responsibilities, you cannot say that the work is complete. Like Parliament, prior approval of Parliament means that Parliament should give approval before the next step is taken, but not your subordinate that you have appointed. You said you should consult him before you appoint his deputy. That
provision, really, if you take a critical look or analysis of it, it's quite obsolete.
I still don't understand that provision. But in any case, we were of the opinion that if within that period there was a regional minister, then the assumption is that the president would have consulted him. In any case, we've never requested evidence of consultation.
Very well.
In Parliament.
Very well. Very well. But now let's make the transition to all this whole debate about the creation of the new regions. And it looks like it had been brewing, but what has been the icing on the cake have been the numerous comments, not once, I think thrice, of the Agbogbon Mafia of the Asogli State, who is also the president of the National House of Chiefs, Togbi Akpede. And now we had the former Attorney General, Dr. Obed Asamo, who is a stalwart of the opposition NDC, we should say, making that comment about his own comment, that's Togbi Akpede's comment, being constitutional nonsense.
Well, the impression I get is that probably a lot of people have not seen the report of the Commission of Inquiry. And
it's not public. That's
yes, and their recommendations. That is one issue that I see. But if you read the Constitution very well, the Constitution says that the Commission has the right to recommend where the referendum should be held. And as far as the report is concerned, they recommended that those who want to have their own region and who petitioned and who appeared before the Commission to justify why they should have their own regions, those are the places where the referendum should be conducted. So that if they get the required turnout of 50% and the required approval of 80%, then a region would have been created. So it's not for us, for instance, staying in Accra here, to say that we are all part of Ghana, we have a say. So when people have petitioned for a region to be created for them in BA or Northern region or Western region or Water region, then we should all vote. That's not what the Constitution says. If it's a national referendum, like the case of amending provision of the Constitution which is entrenched, like where we want to get MMDCs elected, which is a provision entrenched, that one, the whole country should have a referendum. But if it's specific regions and we've managed to make their case for the commission to accept the case and submit it and recommended that this is how it should go, that should have been the end of the matter. But unfortunately, some have a different interpretation. And as for the Constitution, some of the provisions are very clear. But if anybody is not too happy with how those who have been assigned responsibilities interpret the Constitution, the next resort is the Supreme Court. I know there are some cases there as to whether this particular one is part of it. The Supreme Court should be able to determine it. But on the face of it, it's so clear that the Commission should determine those who go for the referendum.
And if you look at what the arguments have been from those who have been supporting the creation of the new regions, they cite we've had our own plebiscite as a country. We've had the inclusion of the Volta region. We used to be the Transvolta Togoland, and we've had Eritrea. We've had some other countries on the continent. The creation of South Sudan from the Sudan, etc. So the rationale is the geographical area and the populational demographics thereof. They have the voice. They will petition or advocate. We want to sever and create our own independent state. So they have to decide whether we want it or not. So the referendum is to determine whether the voices that are for are louder than the voices that are not for. Is that the rationale? And so we cite all those examples.
Yes, and the other aspect is that, was there any petition from Southern Volta? And what was the nature of the petition? It's those who appeared before the Commission and made their case, who have had their case accepted. They are the ones that the Commission has recommended. And then, if you claim to carry the voice of those who want a separate region, then that voice should be put to test. And if you meet the required threshold in the Constitution, you get your region.
What would have happened?
So even within that enclave, the Constitution is saying that 80% should agree that indeed we want a separate region. If it falls below 80%, if it's 79%, the region stays. There will be no partition, because it means that it's not just simple majority of 51. You're saying that 80% should agree that, yes, we think that. But referenda are held all over the place. In Scotland, they wanted to break away from the United Kingdom, Great Britain. The referendum failed. So that's how it goes. They didn't get, so they are still part of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, true. But what would have happened if the Commission had recommended, maybe perhaps veering from the norm, that the whole of the Volta region should be the demographic or the population for voting?
Yes, the same way like they would have recommended the whole of Western region or Brahafo or Northern region should vote on that matter. Of course, I didn't appear before the Commission, but they would have looked at all the issues, one, look at the precedents, two, and then look at the practicality of it, three. Otherwise, the impression will be created that these people more or less want to break away. We are more, so we will not allow them to break away. That should be the rationale behind it. And I don't think if they stretch it, if the Commission were to stretch it, then the whole Ghana should go for a referendum. But that particular provision in the Constitution doesn't say so. It says the Commission should determine where the referendum should be held. And the implications, I get the impression that some traditional authorities think that this whole creation of regions may diminish their authorities. But that is even not the case. Because there's a difference between administrative regions and traditional regions. If you take the Otumfo, for instance, there are chiefs in the Brahafo region who owe allegiance to there's two. Traditionally. Some in the Volta region, some even in the Eastern region. But administratively, they are separate regions. So I expected that, for instance, if there's a chief in the proposed Oti region, who by tradition owes allegiance to any chief in Southern Volta, or Volta proper as at now, that allegiance cannot go away. You understand? Or in the north, there was this issue about Chiriponi being part of the proposed new region, and whether some authorities not too happy about it. But at the end of the day, if it's traditional allegiance and authority, it still stays. There's nothing the government can do about it, or those who vote can do about it. It's only the administrative boundaries that would be altered and affected. And this whole thing about creation of regions, someone was giving an example of Upper West region. I mean, we all have to admit that with the creation of Upper West from Upper region, where we now have Upper West and Upper East, a lot has been done, and the things are more convenient for them.
But,
yes.
But that argument about development, do we need administrative setups or enclaves before regions or geographical areas are developed?
Well, our history shows that there's merit in that argument, because Ghana started with how many regions? Ghana started with only 3 regions. You understand? And it was quite difficult administering such vast regions. And if you go to Western regions, for instance, now, somebody in the Seshi area has to, whether he likes it or not, has to deal with Sekeni Takrady as the capital of the region. And it takes days to be able to transact one simple business. And so long as we have not managed to develop where people have to fly in and out, and where people have very good roads, those things, people think that everything has been concentrated in the regional capitals. And the moment it happens that way, then we should find a way of making sure that we devolve. And that even brings more development. Because otherwise, even if you look at Ghana now, Accra is choked. Because the average person thinks that everything is in Accra here. But the person gets to Accra, he comes to sleep in a kiosk. He comes to work on that street looking for menial jobs. But they think everything is here. In the same way, if we don't find a way of developing these areas, very soon Ghana will be Accra. Already the population of Accra is about 4 million.
Yes.
Our services, everything.
The last count were to 4.5.
Yes. Yeah. And the services, everything are breaking down.
Overstretched.
Overstretched. And probably even that 4.5 million is conservative, because every day people are coming here, some even not from Ghana, and set up all over the places. So if at least development will go to these places by creating their own administrative centers for them. What is in a region? It's just a name and geographical space.
By this argument of perhaps spreading or mitigating the underdevelopment of those inaccessible areas of our country with the creation of the administrative regions, then in 50 years' time or 20 years' time, we could have more regions created. Is that
or we could reconfigure the whole thing and even become smaller, depending on how we have managed ourselves and how we have developed. I mean, if you go to United States of America, they have all these states. They have these states, and they believe that they are able to develop and people have access to services. That's the most critical thing. If I have to transact business in Sekeni Takrady, and it has to take me so much time because that's where the capital is, then we have to change it. It cannot go on that way forever, especially with this kind of development and everything. And they think that if you are sharing the national cake and you are sharing it based on regions, then they should also have their regions so that you also think of them and bring the cake there. It's even with these municipalities and districts. Every area is clamoring for a district because they think that if you cite a district headquarters in a particular district,
it's a rallying point for development.
It's a rallying point for development. And it's cascading into the regional thing too. Of course, there should be a stop somewhere. But if at this stage, that will help us move faster. I think there's merit in it. And no region should think that the region has been shrunk in the sense that we used to be this big. Now it's been, otherwise the Upper West region will not have come out of Upper region. And then all these regions will not have, because Eastern region even included Greater Accra.
Yeah, I remember.
You remember?
Based on my literature.
Yes, your geography, your history. Your history. Eastern region. And as I said, when we started, we were only about 3. The protesters, the coastal area, and all those northern sector. But we've moved on. And both leading parties promised in their manifesto that they think is the way forward.
Former President John Dramani Mahama held a live event to outline the manifesto. Yeah,
and it's all part of it.
Yes.
In fact, I
think he proposed 5 regions.
They proposed 5 regions, and then we have proposed 6. People have come to make their case, and the Commission has submitted its recommendations.
But at the end of the day, the counter-argument, or perhaps the added argument, will be that creating administrative regions comes with cost. Because
Certainly.
you would need a new minister. You would need
that's the list. That's the list.
Minister.
That's the list of the costs.
You need
infrastructure. You need infrastructure. You have to build
facilities to work with.
Yes.
You need budgetary allocations.
You have RCC for 10. Now you need RCC for 16. If it's agreed that all these places should become regions by the referendum. So government will have to spend more for these regions to come up. Of course, it will not be overnight, but indeed we have to make allocation of resources to these whole areas so that they also develop. So that is what it is. They ask for the appointment of government officials. It's a list of the costs.
No, but of course we're talking about, it means that we need to have NCC, we need to have SHRAJ, regional, all of them. You know, we're talking about the costs. That's the added cost, not only maybe the political government.
No, not necessarily. What is the point in having, let's say, NCC only in Sekenita Takrady?
But we have it in the district. Why don't you rather create more districts in municipal and metropolitan areas? And make sure that
I even think we've created enough. I even think the districts are now almost equal to even the constituencies. Last count 254. I know that there will be probably additional 5 or 6 which will come in. So you may end up maximum 260 now. And 260 now, even though it's for the mostly, you see them in the big regions. Ashanti, Greater Accra, that's where most have come. Other regions too, districts have been created. And moving forward, a region rather brings them together. The region brings them together and it becomes more compact and easier to manage.
Well, right now we had a display of register
in those affected areas.
And
come December 27, those areas will be voting. The voting date has been fixed for December 27. We are expecting that the Electoral Commission will bring the symbols as to the yes and no symbols so that the people will decide on 27th December whether yes, they want a new region or no, they want to stay in the old region. So they should be given the opportunity to do that. I don't think that this is part of democracy. They want a region, they've made a case, Commission has accepted it. Now the rest of the work is for the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission is required to conduct the referendum and they fix the date. Right? The CI that they are bringing to Parliament, they have to get the symbols, they have to put everything in place so that the referendum will go on. And if they meet the required figure, they write to the Speaker and to the President. And then those regions would have been created.
From now to 2021, we'll be very busy in the referendum and all the issues about, election of MMDCs and all that. All gives us that schedule of trying to put
all things being equal, by the end of the year, would have seen the end of the creation of regions. Next year, there's supposed to be district level elections,
yes,
which is every 4 years. And the government has decided that when it's time for the district level elections, that same day, Ghanaians should decide whether at the district level, political parties should be allowed to sponsor candidates, including chief executives. So if EC keeps to its timetable, September 2019, new assembly members or assembly members will be voted on. All of us will have to choose our assembly members from our electoral areas. But that very day, we should also take a decision whether even DCs who superintend over everything, whether we should have a say.
So we'll do that concurrently?
Concurrently.
When the district level election is on?
Yes, that very day. So there will be 2 ballot papers, more or less, voting for assemblyman. In fact, it should be 3, because you vote for assemblyman, you need committee members. And yes or no, should we vote on DCs, or should we still allow the president to nominate them for the small number in the assembly?
Have we taken into cognizance that usually for the district level elections we have voter turnout being low?
That is even one of the reasons why the president suggested that it should be on the same day.
To beef up.
To let people be more conscious that indeed there will be district level elections, and it is tied with a referendum. Okay. Because the constitution, the same constitution, says that at least 40% should turn out to vote, and 75% of those who turn out should agree. And if you look at the trend, when it comes to district level elections, most of the time you don't even get a 40%. But the aim is to galvanize people to be interested in district level elections, because there's this added bonus of voting whether the DC should be elected by all of us or should still be appointed. So that's what will happen next year, and it's a loaded calendar for the Electoral Commission. That's the most critical thing.
Well, so we now have to do the transition and talk about the other matters in relation to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology.
Yeah.
And we know how it all started. There was a meeting that was convened, and we had the Minister of Education and the other party. We'll hear from the Information Minister, Kwadwo Nkrumah, on the subject. Nancy Amefaj-Dadosi was there, will bring us the latest update. And then we also know that, well, there has been some conclusions that have been made. The Chancellor is supposed to make sure that by Friday we have a reconstituted governing council of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So just watch the story by Nancy Amefaj-Dadosi.
Some 30 minutes into the meeting that began at 2 p.m., members of the University Teachers Association of Ghana stepped out of the conference room to hold a caucus meeting. They then rejoined the government team, which included the Minister of State in charge of Tertiary Education, Deputy Minister of Education, the Senior Minister, the Information Minister Designate, and the National Security Minister. They emerged from the meeting again after 30 minutes, this time at the request of the government team. The news conference, which was jointly addressed by the government team and UTAG, followed after another 1 hour and 30 minutes of deliberations.
Now, today, Monday, 29th of October 2018, government requested the Chancellor of the University, Otumfuo Osei-Tutu, to lead the next steps in reconstituting the University Council in accordance with the University Statute and relevant laws. Council is expected to be reconstituted by Friday, November 2nd, 2018. The reconstituted council will then take over from the interim governing council.
The UTAG President, Dr. Opoku Mensah, in his remarks urged government to honor the agreement reached at the meeting.
We support it, and we are going to abide by it to make sure that law and order is restored on KNUST campus, and our dear students return back for us to do what we love to do best. We're hoping that all arrangements being put in place to make sure that council is reconstituted, vice chancellor restored, all of it would work accordingly, according to the timetable.
He also called on UTAG members to restore their services, asking all other stakeholders to join in resolution efforts.
Government has subsequently engaged with UTAG and updated the association accordingly of the developments that I've mentioned earlier. UTAG has undertaken to restore services, cooperate in resolution efforts, and encourage other stakeholders to join resolution efforts.
Dr. Pokumensa also tells JoyNews the Vice Chancellor of the KNUST, Professor Kwesi Obridanso, is expected to be reinstated. Nancy Emefa Jodosi, JoyNews.
So we've been joined by George Lowe. George Lowe is a former member of Parliament for North Dying, but also a legal practitioner. Not at the courts today. You can see obviously by his dressing. Good morning to you, George.
Good morning. Regional Secretary. Yeah. For those ones, you have to let us. Oh, plenty. More is on the way. More they come.
You have to be appointed to the National Executive, one of the appointing positions.
Well, I don't know.
All right. So earlier we're talking about the OT region and the concerns about whether the referenda should be held, etc. But we've exhausted that. Now we're on KNUST. We know what has transpired. We just heard from the Minister Designate for Information, Kujo Ponkroma, about the conclusions that have been reached. But let me just pick your thoughts on where we are currently. Of course, you can do some recollection.
Well, good morning, Roland. Good morning, Obi. And good morning to your cherished viewers. You see, the whole KNUST matter is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it happened. It's unfortunate the way it was handled. I sometimes sit back and wonder why when things happen, we want to pretend as though we're reinventing the wheel. All the issues that happened in the KNUST matter had happened in other universities in the past. History will tell you that we've always had such one or two crises like that in the universities. But the way we handle them is the most important. Unfortunately, in this case, we rushed. We took decisions that were not even grounded in law. We took decisions that did not have any basis. And so we are where we are. The big question you ask is, who is advising who in this matter? If you have the likes of OB in the MPP, if you have some other people, but the president himself is a lawyer, and yet we are going to resolve issues like dissolution of council, and we are not even doing it according to the law, So I think that we should learn lessons from what has happened, and knowing that moving forward, when we have crisis on our hands, we should employ proper crisis management tools, to be able to deal with the matter. I am happy that at least there is some roadmap. I hope that again the roadmap will not be bungled, because if we still do not handle where we are going very well, we will run into problems. My ultimate desire is for our brothers and sisters to get back to school, so that they can concentrate on the courses that they have to do, and then they finish school, and then they go out to the job market and look for a job and contribute to the development of this country. So, well, we understand that the Otumfuo is supposed to lead a certain process. We hope he's able to do something. Is he the right person is another question. But like I said, I hope that something useful comes out of this process.
Well,
I don't know whether.
You can just make your contributions on the subject.
Well, as to his last comment, whether Otumfuo is the right person, I believe he is been referring to the law and things that we should have gone by the legal provisions or what the law says. The head of the university is the chancellor. Otumfuo is the chancellor, so he's the head of the university. He's appointed by the president on the advice of the University Council. What has happened was not normal. Some of us, we've been part of student demonstrations in our student days. And I was telling people the violence and the mayhem was unprecedented. I mean, I was wondering, are these students or some people were brought from elsewhere to cause this kind of havoc? I mean, demonstrating against university authorities, not even government. When it's government, it could be very volatile, but university authorities.
Just university?
Just university authorities. And then people had their vehicles vandalized. When they see the university vehicle, then they have to set on the vehicle and vandalize it. Some ladies were chased out of the halls. Some, now it's disputed. Some say that it was accidental fire, which led to about 16 ladies being hospitalized. Some too said it was deliberate arson. By the end of the day, we all saw what happened on the campus. To the extent that RESEC had to impose curfew. To the extent that the university security and the police couldn't handle the matter. Military men had to come in. So these were very serious situations. At the end of the day, the government had to step in, because those who had been trusted with the responsibility of running the university appeared to have lost control, because the students said they would not obey them. The students said they thought that they had been marginalized in running the whole university. At the end of the day, government stepped in.
Does it mean the action the government took was just
it was just, yes, very temporary. It was just to normalize things, because those who were
interim council,
well,
which had a 3-month mandate, or up to a 3-month mandate.
That was the initial arrangement. That what we do to hold this volatile situation. By the end of the day, as you heard the Minister upon Nkrumah say, all parties have come to agree that as quickly as possible, the university should start working again. And then the Chancellor should assist in bringing everything to normalcy. And that is what should happen. And I'm even amazed. I'm amazed that so rapidly we seem to be agreeing that things should be normal. Because what happened that time, I thought it would take us months to resolve it. After all, we used to go on demonstration, not on campus, but in town. And we ended up staying at home for 1 whole year. Our year group, those who were supposed to have finished in 84, finished in 85. Because of Haluta, those days, military government. I remember it all started from KNUST, when Dambuche and Atta Kennedy and co were being sworn in as KNUST executive. Then miners from Obuasi came to invade the campus and then ransacked everything, and then people from town also joined. And then universities were closed down 1 whole year. So if by next week or so, universities
could resume,
the university could resume, that means we've made very rapid progress. But that should not create the impression that everything is normal. If people set out to destroy public property and nothing is done about it, the impression is that anybody can do what he wants. Okay. Indeed, if I had my own way, if people should be sincere, Vice Chancellor, University Council, student leadership, they should all resign.
Yeah, we'll come back and talk about now the actions that need to be taken after we have a reconstituted council, and then what should be happening to the students who have been found to have been culpable, etc. But of course, he has to take investigations to ascertain all that. But let's go have just one word from the Executive Director of the Institute of Education Studies, who is joining us on Skype, and Peter Patiante is joining us from somewhere around Takwa. Oh, I hope it's Takwa. Good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning, yeah.
Okay, so I just want to ask you a question, and sorry for making you waste all the time on Skype, but it's just a question. The action taken by government, and then also the action that needs to be taken after the reconstitution, how should we synchronize that?
All right, thank you. I think what will bring actions together is the need for the university to get back on its feet. If we all agree UST has to get back on its feet and academic work should, as early as possible, begin. You see, we should not lose sight of the most of our colleagues from the other countries come to study in Ghana simply because of our stable tertiary education system. So anything that would tend to destroy or interrupt our tertiary education system would not only affect the reputation of the university in the country, but outside the country. So if you are guided by that principle, you are guided by the fact that we need UST back on its feet and academic work restored, then any action that we are going to take currently and after would all gear towards pushing UST on the global platform.
Okay, so now the Chancellor is supposed to take over the whole action of reconstituting the council. After that is done, how should we look forward to the actions that need to be taken in terms of, well, how do we provide for the Vice-Chancellor who is in the middle of the whole impasse, and a student on the other hand who also perpetrated all these?
Yeah, I think a lot of compromises have been reached. So I know that if it happens that someone needs to step down, I think that the right decision will be made. But I suspect that for the interest of the university, you see how all of us are running around making sure that the university is reopened. So I think for the interest of the university, every decision that will be taken would be in the general good of the university. For the students who part in the demonstration and who destroy I think that the relevant authorities should take note of them, and the right things are done. You see, we should not leave this standing because other students in other universities are watching, and if we don't treat their actions with the kind of urgency and seriousness it needs, we would end up hurting ourselves in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Executive Director of the Institute of Education Studies, Peter Pateanti, joining us there and giving us the inside of think tank, what they think about it. But George, how do we take it from there? Up to Friday, we're supposed to have a reconstituted council. But after we've reconstituted a council, then we have to deal with the subject, because the agitations were about the management, and the management was day-to-day administration led by a vice-chancellor, and the students also went overboard, flouted due regulations, and were untoward in their behavior.
Well, as I said, I don't think that anybody would say bravo students for destruction of property and the other unreasonable behavior that has been put up. But it flows from somewhere. But there cannot be any justification for that. But you see, when we are set to resolve issues, we must resolve issues properly and don't. For instance, you are talking about a reconstituted council. Who is reconstituting which council?
Before I agree.
The point is that you cannot reconstitute a council that was illegally dissolved. Because you know how the university council is constituted. There are members, institutional representation, about 15 of them. Only about 4 people are appointed by the president. So the president at best could have revoked the appointment of those that he appointed. But because the president cannot go and revoke the appointment or revoke the appointment of a table representative on council.
Well, we've moved on from there.
No, I'm just saying that. So in the first place, was the council really dissolved? The fact that somebody says so does not mean that legally it is. So if we are just saying that council is coming to do its work, it's not for me, it's not a reconstituted council. I mean, you should stop talking about a reconstituted council. Council cannot be reconstituted as it stands now. The best thing is that maybe new government appointees can be appointed because the president has revoked the appointment of those that he has the power to appoint. Now, if we are going back to the status quo ante, then the Vice Chancellor and his team would have to conduct an investigation or put in place an investigation body. Are we able to identify the students individually for the things that, or are you going to say that maybe students in a particular hall, that will be a decision that will flow from the investigations that will be carried out. But I also believe, and I share in the sentiment, that if people are identified clearly that you, Roland Walker, you went out there and deliberately destroyed this, you should not be let to go free. I mean, it sends such a bad signal that, well, anytime there's something, I can also sit behind it or hide behind it and do also all sorts of things. You see, Obi talked about a certain scenario. His students' days, mine, even we at our level were saying that we were not as mature as you guys were. I mean, those times, university authorities must learn that times have changed. A lot of things are done differently. In the past, when even we were doing Mobro and Aluta and things, like he said, we wanted the public to know that we are being victimized or things are being done against us. So you will find that we'll come to circle and sit in the middle and stop vehicular traffic just to draw public attention. We're not interested in destroying the property. Because if you destroy your own property, when you go back to university, what are you going to do? Because if you destroyed computers that hold your own result details, and tomorrow you want to travel abroad and they tell you they can't find your results, how are you going to do it? So clearly, I mean, we must all be part of the solution. And I hope that moving forward, people will begin to understand what must be done and must be done properly.
Obi, I've heard this word, then it's again, Auntie Peter also said it, a compromise. Now, the students are on record to have been reported to have said that consistently for a number of months prior to the time they convened or staged that protest, there were some action that were taken by so-called delegated authority or bodies, either from management, etc., against their persons. And that seemed to have inflamed passions because they infringed on their human rights, etc. They had called for the head of the Vice-Chancellor. Now, how do we compromise that? Knowing that we have council, the Vice-Chancellor is a daily manager of the university with his other managers, and perhaps reason not to call into question his legitimacy when concerns are being raised by the very people he's supposed to manage.
Well, in the first place, I want George to agree with me that whatever it is, by Friday, there will be reconstitution of the council. Reconstitution meaning that every government even brings in 4 new persons. The council has been reconstituted. And then the other bodies, JU, alumni, all those things, if they agree that the same person should stay on, they are bringing new persons. It's reconstitution. That's number 1. 2 is the council which supervises the Vice-Chancellor, who is the head of the institution. And I believe that they underestimated this whole matter because it was brewing and they were bringing out issues. And if indeed some of these issues were true, then obviously they saw a fire coming and they pretended that there will be no fire. Because I can't believe that this day and age, you say that students should not be seen in halls, certain halls by 10 p.m.
Does that call into question the ability, competence, or the legitimacy of the Vice-Chancellor to still be at post after the reconstitution?
No, what we may have to find out is that, was it only his decision, or was it the decision of the council? You understand? Even though the Act talks about statutes in the sense that the university on its own can bring its own laws, and if the stakeholders are informed, then it becomes part of the laws. So what we need to find out is that these statutes, which brought in some of these little things, at which level were they discussed? You understand? Because even nowadays, if this water hall was the only purely female hall, by midnight they say you can't enter water hall. When you go, the gates will be closed. And that was the end of the matter. But if you say that those who be found by 10 p.m. in a hall with ladies will be named and shamed, are they in a secondary school?
And obviously, it's a mixed hall too.
It's a mixed hall. Obviously, you're going to create problems. If you thought that we should find a way of making sure that boys don't go and sleep in ladies' rooms or vice versa, I don't think that's the way you can do about it. And some of us, we even find it funny. This whole thing about even mixed halls and those things, some of us, we don't even see the big deal.
Yes.
Because me, I was in Sabah Hall. I started in a mixed hall, ended in a mixed hall. And we didn't see the fetish about it. But some see it as tradition and fetish. But if you've decided to mix them, and then know how it is done elsewhere, and do it, than to create this kind of situation, then university security. Just university security was creating a problem. I mean, if the idea was to arrest criminals, keep them, and let the police come in, it was mainly for those who invade the university, those who come there who are not students and who are found to have flouted the law, not students. You start keeping students in cells, you get the impression that the academic freedom that you are talking about is not even being pursued.
All right, so we have to wrap up the conversation on this, but we'll wrap up with Dr. Ali Seidu, a political scientist, University of Ghana. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Ali Seidu.
Good morning, Roland.
It's good hearing your voice once again. But we know that prior to the demonstrations or within the period, we had heard all the comments from leading political figures and all that. But this is not political in any way. It's just student demonstrating and all that. At the end of the day also, the decisions of actionable people in government seem to have been called into question. Does it make it political in any way in terms of the politics of it?
What's the question?
Yeah, Roland, I think politics is number one, especially with a democratic state. One, in other jurisdictions, especially in the Western world, the academia provides or serves as the engine of growth and the engine of development. And they are key stakeholders in the day-to-day policy-making processes. They are on policy, they are thinking shaped the way policies are implemented, they are reviewing and evaluation helps strengthen policy implementation. If you look at the history of politics in this country, universities have been very, very, very strong, especially if you are looking at university, but also like-minded academic institutions like the Ghana Law Association were very instrumental in our transition from a military regime to a democratic dispensation. And you have always seen the banter that goes on between government and then academic institutions, especially when it has to do with policy or payment of their arrears and allowances. It's very important. So it starts, the participation of academic institutions started a long time with the formation of political party student wings on campuses, using those particular students to foment trouble or to change policy outcomes. The appointment, it makes sense that government reserves a proportionate number of appointments in the university council, either 3 or 4 appointed by government, because government has bearing on what happens in academic institutions, and what happens in academic institutions affect policy and the way governance is being conducted. But I think that has to be at that limit, rather than influencing interference. There's a difference between what government engaging the academia in a way that is legally mandated, and it is a different thing fomenting, interfering in the way academic institutions are being governed. I think from the word go, people have interest. But you see, these universities are governed by legislative framework. That's why we are in a democracy. And every legislative framework provides procedure legally for dealing with things. If you ignore the framework or the procedure and do things in a knee-jerk manner, one day, you'll be forced to reverse some of those decisions. And reversing some of those decisions will speak to the kind of management style that you are putting forward. So if we follow the framework, the laws that establish universities, and the procedure that is supposed to be used to do things, we wouldn't have to reverse most of the things we do in the past.
Okay.
The students complain, Roland, that they were being marginalized. The leader of the SRC is a council member. You have the evidence and the free will to table this particular kind of grievance that you have, which wasn't in to the benefit of students before council. So there are procedures of doing everything. Students have the right to demonstrate, but you don't have the right to vandalize the property of the university. That's criminal.
Well, Dr. Seidu, the thing is that we know that all the parties have wings in the universities and the various tertiary institutions. I mean, it's always been now, especially in the Fourth Republic, that we've had them churning out leaders who have become prominent in the parties, etc. Even Obiamo was just telling me how prominent he was in some of the demonstration during his time at the university. It doesn't mean that he was political at the time, but the actions in themselves may not be party political, but are political in themselves. How does that perhaps...
I agree student leaders are supposed to serve the interests of students. And that's what students have the right to peacefully demonstrate against ills and mismanagement of the university administration. That is their right. You can't take it away from them. But when you move beyond peaceful demonstration to vandalizing property, that is criminal. You understand? So I'm not saying they don't have the right to demonstrate. Students are important stakeholders to the management of the university.
Okay.
And with that, students, they come to learning process. But that's why I'm referring to institutions and procedure. The institutions are basically the legislative legal framework that govern how things must be done in a university.
Okay.
If you fail to restore, it's just like even management. If university management then use the right procedure within the legal framework, you can't abuse students' rights and interests without recourse to law. That is not fair.
All right.
So if both institutions, if both government of the day, university management and students all follow the right processes and restore to the law, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Alidu Seidu, political scientist, is a political science lecturer at University of Ghana, political science department. But let's conclude. From next week, Monday, what actions would you want seen? Because we would have had a reconstituted, let me just put it to you, a reconstituted council.
We would have had a new council. We have had a council. I mean,
and then what actions
would they... well, I think that the council itself would have to find its own checklist. There are several things that needs to be done. They would have to look at the way it is done, because you see, half the time we are all talking from a distance. We are reading things and we are hearing things and we are just also postulating all sorts of
running an university is
but
not,
yes, no, but you see, it is to a large extent that, you see, when council itself is, like Obi said, is aware of the problems that led to this thing. Are they going to just say, let's address the issues, or that first they have to put their own house in order? There are many things that needs to be done.
So you expect the Vice Chancellor to resign?
No. When I say put their house in order, they may want to revoke some of their own rules and directives that they've given, or they may want to say, okay, we'll rather tighten the noose for now and release it slowly as time goes on. So clearly they will have their work cut out for them.
Your last question. This is just a short one.
Well, but we thank God that peace appears to be coming back to the university campus. But we should not pretend that everything is okay, so that within months the whole thing will erupt again. We should look at the root cause and see how we address some of these things. In fact, some of us were even advocating for drastic measures like Commission of Inquiry. The Commission of Inquiry would have been very drastic, because then powers of a high court, and then their findings, if it's accepted by the white paper, would have entailed very serious consequences. But I think the government has been mild enough and say that let the Chancellor handle it. We should all cooperate to let it work.
Thank you very much. Obi Amwa, Osei Bonsu-Amwa, is a Deputy Minister for Local Government and also Member of Parliament for Ikuapem South. He's also a Member of Parliament's Appointment Committee. He's more than a big man. He's also a lawyer. So another lawyer is George Lowe. Today, fortunately, he's not going to the court, so he's resting, going to take some nice bowl of fufu in the afternoon for lunch. But he's also a former Member of Parliament for North Dine. Thanks for joining me, George.
He used to be a lawyer for Betty Mood.
He used to be a lawyer for Betty Mood. Yes, I should add that. Well, we're taking a break. When we come back, we'll have a great conversation with you. Look, you know all that about Cosmos has been doing with some great entrepreneurs, young people. We're speaking to other people on the subject. Stay with us.